This episode is brought to you by SMZH, your independent go-to partner in all matters relating to finance, insurance, real estate, tax and law for both private and corporate clients. To find out more, go to smzh.ch. SMZH, tailor-made, holistic for you.
It's kind of DNA in myself that when I see something which is complex, I like to simplify it and also to simplify it for others.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Silvan.
Andy, very well, welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest today.
Thank you for the invitation.
You are the former Generali Switzerland CEO and currently the board member at SMZH here in Zurich. Before we talk about your career, I want to go back a bit when you had to make the initial industry choice. You have a very distinguished career in the insurance industry. What actually drew you to that industry in the first place?
So in fact, it's a kind of a coincidence. I finished high school and I wanted to do an internship and I had two choices: to go to an insurance company or to a commodity trader at that time in Zug. So the insurance company won, and so I started internship there, and then again and again every month later. So I was more and more interested to keep an eye on insurance business, and then I stayed for the last more or less 37 years, yes.
Wow. Do you ever regret that decision and say, oh no, I should have gotten into the commodity trading business?
Maybe, but you know, the insurance industry is a very robust industry. Even if there are crises, insurance is something that's steady. It's a good purpose, even in crisis, in terms of securing financial protection for our customers. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, no, I never regret this move.
What made the difference between the two when you were younger and had to face that decision?
At that time, I was so young, so the others, they said, no, we have another candidate. And okay. At the insurance company, they said, yeah, please welcome.
Perfect. That's sometimes the little coincidences in life, I assume.
Absolutely. So you never know what would have happened if for the trader there was a kind of oil trading. Yeah. So I would have been more probably an international career at that time, yes.
Absolutely. And, you know, the insurance industry also comes with challenges, and I'm sure you have seen many in your decades in that industry. What challenges did you specifically see that actually also shaped you in your leadership style?
The insurance industry made a lot of progress in terms of regulation, in terms of risk management and using technologies to improve the whole business model. Mm-hmm. At the end, it stays more or less still the same or very similar to what we saw 20, 25 years ago. But with internet, with other technology developments, it turned into a complete modern industry, even if others were more with disruption and with kind of a completely changing your business model with these kind of effects. This was not the case for the insurance business.
No. Talking about innovation and also staying on top of things, I wonder what are the most significant disruptive trends that you see emerging right now in insurance industries? Because we see a lot changing with new technology.
I do not want to be boring, but it's AI. So everybody talks about AI. And so the thing is, I grew up in business re-engineering. So you have kind of a business model, you have business processes, and you take these processes, you want to optimize them, and then you have technology to do so. When I grew up in the insurance business, I brought my own home PC to the office in '88 to show how we can increase productivity and also what could be the influence of personal computer in an insurance office. And so therefore they said, okay, you have to go to the headquarters to Winterthur and then to show there what we can do. And I did. And so I went in all these, kind of pioneer projects of establishing PCs, notebooks, pen computers for our sales force at that time. And so I was always interested in these kind of challenges and new technologies and projects that are a little bit difficult. And so the influence as such for the insurance industry is whatever technology helps to make the customer more happy, to increase your productivity and your processes, the better. And this needs, of course, change in people, but also in the whole structure of your company. And
It sounds like a focus on productivity, efficiency. And I wonder, what role do startups play in that regard? Is it more of improving the current processes, or is it really also bringing new game-changing technology into the insurance industry?
So let's have a look at the value chain of an insurance company. You have products and you have the sales force selling products. You have the underwriting, taking the right risks. Then you have policy administration, doing all the paperwork, and you have claims. And claims is, of course, something which is, if it happens for the customer, it's kind of touch point, the emotional touch point. And then, of course, also asset management. If you're a life insurer, you have to manage all these assets. So you have a lot of different value chain elements. And then you have startups. And there are startups covering the whole value chain. There are not so many, but globally you see thousands of startups just taking one puzzle piece out of this value chain, optimizing that with a piece of technology. They think it makes absolutely sense to optimize it, to make it more productive, to make it much more visible to the customer with a better convenience, better comfort, whatever. And that's the story you buy then, and where you get in the knowledge, the spirit of startups coming from the outside.
So in that sense, that sounds like more optimizing a current process and then buying the startup or working with the startup.
Exactly. So you have a puzzle piece you want to optimize. Yep. You are a little bit stuck in the middle with your own capabilities to change it. And you see that there are startups that focusing on this puzzle piece, and then you take it out and you involve it into your IT landscape or your systems you have in your company.
And you have led a big insurance company, Generali, here in Switzerland. And how do you, as a bigger company, sort of maintain this balance between your core offering, which is very stable and also very predictive in a sense, but also embracing new technologies and maybe even working with startups in that sense?
Yeah. So at Generali, we founded the so-called House of Insurtech.
Yeah.
And we invited startups which were very close to the insurtech business or financial tech. So what we have seen are startups where we said, okay, you are working on things that we can use in our projects. And others where we say, it's maybe not the time for us now to jump in, but we covered some of these projects with their knowledge of their startup, what they created. Mm-hmm. And so therefore the idea was, of course, also to use that further on in the Generali group. So we had up to 7, 8, 9 startups in our innovation garage. And I think to make now the shift into the own organization, you have to bring people of your own organization also into this garage, where you can maybe work a little bit in a sandbox mode, where you have not the same rules, you can be more open, but at the same time also saying it's not only in the innovation garage we want to act like this, it's also in the whole organization. So that's a cultural change, but it takes time. You need to again and again bring people, new fresh people in, and also give them the opportunity to take part of projects that are happening in an environment where innovation is absolutely key. No. And an insurance company has to invest heavily in innovation. And sometimes there are experiments with moderate results, but sometimes it's things really, that's cool, that's good stuff, and everyone is then proud of that. Yeah.
I like these two-folded strategy. The first one is really just working with startups that are working in that field. And there, if something works, you have massive scale, right? As Generali, for example, with the distribution channels and also your customer base. But then to make that switch from, hey, this is a smaller startup corporation to, okay, now we're going to roll that out globally or at least in the local market. There you need the culture aspect. And I assume that's probably sometimes a very big challenge to solve, to sort of bridge the gap between the startup culture and the corporate culture. How do you solve that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you have a good story, it will be bought by everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's always a question of the right timing of other companies within a group, an insurance group. They have also their projects, and they have not invented here syndrome where they say we have our own people and so on and so forth. So you need from the very top this kind of mindset to push innovation and also it's called reap the benefit of being global. Mm-hmm. And if you have the chance to do so, then you can take a benefit out of it. If you have the possibility, but you don't do it, then of course you don't differentiate from others that have not this opportunity to look to the left and to the right in the same company to benefit from other inventions.
And we did a bit of research on your LinkedIn profile. There you summarize some of your key leadership principles. I like to talk about two of them in that concept. One is simplify to the max, and the other one is listening before deciding. How do these two play a role in what you just described to really have innovation and also bridging the culture gap?
I start with the second, listening before deciding. So that any decision is made by someone. In the company, if the CEO decides, it makes absolutely sense that he is questioning all the different elements that will then lead to a decision, and to discuss this with all the people, relevant people, having knowledge and competence to talk about it. It's nothing to do with hierarchy. Bring in the people that have the knowledge to give you best information to make this decision. And that's why before deciding, it's absolutely crucial to listen and to understand from different perspectives how they look to this problem and also to a potential solution. It would be wrong to jump immediately on a solution and never had the discussions about, okay, what could be an ABC alternative. The one with simplifying to the max, we're living in a complex world, and we have a good benefit if we, in all we do, we try to simplify and not to make it more complex. So it's kind of a DNA in myself that when I see something which is complex, I like to simplify it and also to simplify it for others. Mm-hmm. If I see something is falling down, I go for the root cause, why it's falling down, and not just fix it and it falls down again in a couple of minutes. Okay. So that means to simplify in each and every process so that you have a win-win situation with customers, but also with the employees, that the convenience we can offer to customers is very, very high. And the customer feels that and he will reward that.
And I also assume to be even able to simplify, you first need to really understand the topic.
Yeah, that would be quite of risky and dangerous if you don't understand the topic and then you try to simplify it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in that regard, you were leading a pretty big organization, an international organization. You were leading it in Switzerland. And I wonder, you as a CEO, how did you sort of establish the operating system? How did you run the company? Was there, sort of the meetings, the organizational structure, the key management that you wanted to have and work with? What was sort of your operating system to be productive, but also to make these decisions that you just mentioned the right way?
Yeah, we always talk about strategy, culture, and structure, but you need to have a clear strategy vision. So the board of directors, they say, you come up with a strategy and we will then approve. You go to the executive team and we say, okay, let's work on a strategy. What's the market we are in? What are the strengths we have in our own organization? what are the weaknesses, what are the risks, what are the opportunities, so a SWOT analysis. And this is the basis of everything you want to drive forward. And if you understand your own company, then, of course, you can go on and develop a kind of a operating model which fits to the products you have, to the distribution channels you want to use. And this is depending on the strategy, what kind of products you want to sell, for what kind of customer segments. And so one after the other is created to so many puzzle pieces to a overall image. And this will then enforce the decisions how to make the operations you need for that. Yeah. What is the structure? What is the team? What are the players? What are the skills, the competences you need to fulfill all these projects that will follow to transform your organization into the new state of regarding strategy you have picked.
Is there a specific example that you could walk us through to give people a bit of a better understanding from strategy up until the operating system that you established?
So when you decide on a strategy and you say, for instance, you reduce the number of products, that means you get rid maybe of products with a small volume, but a high complexity. And the idea was to be more in the mainstream product lines and therefore enforce all the relevant forces to be sure that there we are very, very strong, and in all the other ones less. So that means you have to switch somehow in the model of competencies and skills of the people you have in your organization. You have also maybe products where you say, we want to automate some of these things. And this leads also to changes within the organization. And therefore, so what you do is you try to understand the market and where are the best chances you will be successful with these kind of products you are very strong in. And then you try to find out what kind of cost base is behind and how can I more or less influence and increase the productivity via automatization and other productivity gains.
Makes a ton of sense. Does simplify to the max also apply to the strategy, or what makes a good strategy from your perspective?
So when you create a strategy and you have always in mind, simplify, and you go in a review and you also challenge that with colleagues or with people in other companies within the insurance group, and you say for yourself, did we do everything to simplify now? Or is it just dark gray, light gray, but it's still gray? And we want to have kind of a color which is easier to understand. And so therefore, the simplification is always in each and every step. If you talk about business processes, about strategy and what we want to do, it's, did we simplify now? Or are we making it complicated than before? It's always, if something is simplified, you have to look at it from the angle from the customer. So if the customer tells you, that was easy, I made a phone call, they take all my information and they will come up with a solution. That's perfect. But sometimes you forget to raise these questions all the time when you change things in the organization.
I imagine. And there's also the employee part, right? As part of the operating system, I imagine that if you have a simple strategy, it's easier to communicate. It's easier for people to remember. So in that sense, that's probably also very important to really understand why and how you're running the company where you want to go for your employees.
Yeah. So there are good examples in the market. So look at Tesla and Elon Musk. He simplifies everything in the car so that you have only the screen, you have only the steering wheel, that's it, pedals, but that's it. So, and if you, at the same time, you go into a BMW, Mercedes or Audi, it's much more complex. Yeah. There is much more buttons and whatever, but there are users saying, I like it. I like this kind of, I want to have buttons and a lot of different menus and whatever. And others, they say, no, I like the way it's simplified. And So that's the taste of at the end.
Makes sense. So it's not one size fits all. It really depends
Absolutely.
on your customers and employees to be involved. Let's also talk about the Swiss insurance landscape in general. We do a lot of things very well in Switzerland, but some things we are lacking a bit behind. For example, digitization in some areas. How do you see that in the Swiss insurance landscape? Do we do enough for digitizing it, or is there a certain lack of that part?
So I think the Swiss insurance companies, they do a great job in terms of serving to the whole Swiss population, insurance coverage and services. And there are, of course, technologies which are at the front door and waiting to be implemented. And many of the companies are already having these kind of projects to do so. There was a steady, but maybe compared to other industries, much more slower development in terms of using technology. And it was not that disruptive because the insurance industry is something, if you take the life business, you have an offer, you make a contract, and you pay every year a premium, and the money you will receive then is 30 years later. So there's not really in a life insurance policy, not so much interaction. Right. But if you have health insurance, for instance, where you have lots of interactions and where you can prove that in the moment of having a claim, or then of course it's crucial that you have the best services you can offer. And also there, Switzerland is a market which works very professional in having a kind of a direct contact between the customer and the employee of an insurance company, of a service company. And as long as the customer likes it, you should do it. And of course, there are now technologies, and we're talking about chatbots, you're talking about speech recognition and AI algorithm that helps within these processes. And we will see many of them developing over the next couple of years. So it will be interesting. But I wouldn't say the insurance industry is maybe slow, but always under control. If it comes to compare the different companies in Switzerland, then our companies, they are much, much further in terms of having done their homework. And others, they still have to do their homework over the next 3 to 4 years, because they all come from the 80s, 90s with a lot of legacy. And now they have to implement new systems with a new architecture, with new capabilities to make it much more easier to interact with the different channels.
But overall, we're heading in the right direction from your perspective.
Yeah.
And I wonder, in that sense, you also have people usually working very many years in an insurance company, for example. To what degree is the digitization also a bit of a generational issue?
Yeah, it's like how we develop technology and opportunities with the generations we have, the Y, X, Z generations, and now Generation A. And so it's I think these kind of stereotypes, to some extent, yes, but I have many examples that it's completely the other way around. So that also people being in a generation where you think, okay, I installed my PC with operating MS Windows or DOS late in the 80s myself, and today you have so much more on a small gadget. But in terms of use case, what you want to do with this kind of technology and using that, it's always the storyline that has to be strong. So what do you want to do? And what is the problem? And if companies, for instance, invest in technology and customers, they like it, there is no other chance than to copy or to differentiate by other items so that you have an advantage in the market again. So this is the normal routine in the market. And if you're young or old or experienced or not, I think to do this kind of development, you need all of them bringing in their expertise and their knowledge and experience.
Absolutely. We did briefly talk about startups. If you look at startups in the insurance space in Switzerland, it's a pretty small market. And we often see that startups, they try to create a different front end to do customer acquisition or whatsoever. But then in the back end, they usually work with an established player for regulations reasons, etc., because it's just easier. In what way do startups in Switzerland in the insurance space have sort of a say in pushing the boundaries and also maybe pressuring the larger established players a bit by doing things differently? Can they even get big enough to be a threat for the bigger companies?
Yeah, it's all about size.
Yeah, because Switzerland is so small, right?
Yeah, but let's have examples. 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was Lemonade founded in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So it's listed at the New York Stock Exchange, so we can look at all the figures.
Yeah.
But what I remember, they have roughly 200 million premium, and they have 1,200 people. And this is a ratio which is incredibly high.
Yeah. So
they do not earn money with it. And the idea of this Lemonade, that was a startup, and they said, we do the whole value chain of insurance, it's very easy to do business with us.
Mm-hmm.
You get your risk insured, and whenever you have a claim, it takes 3 minutes max.
Wow, that is a game changer.
That's a game changer. Yeah. So is it important to settle the claim within 3 minutes? Is it important for the customer? I think they would have probably asked the customer, or the customer is surprised that it's possible to have it in 3 minutes. And so therefore, I'm not saying this is good or this is bad. So this is the only example I see still not earning money, but being in a range of high volume. And of course, there are others in Europe. But in Switzerland, you do not have this kind of exercise which was successful in the past. And there were many where you have to say, we put the risk to a traditional insurance company. We have a nice idea with nice products, with a nice internet website and direct sales and whatever. But at the end, we need, from a regulatory perspective, so many different things. It's almost impossible. Yeah. And you need the volume. One crash with the car with a liability claim of 10 million.
You might be out of business. You
need to earn 100 million in car insurance to cope with that.
Yeah, that's crazy. But also sort of a big hurdle to enter the market at full scale across the whole value chain. Yeah. I think WeFox tried to do that a little bit. They initially started out in Switzerland, then moved their headquarters to Berlin, probably also because Switzerland was just too small of a market. And now they have some internal discussions going on. So yeah, it sort of proves your point that Switzerland is probably too small to have a full-fledged value chain competitor as a startup. Yeah. Let's also talk about your new role. You left the CEO role at Generali. I think you said you've been there for 6 years. First of all, how was it for you to change after 6 years of probably going full steam and giving everything you had to this role, dedication and hard work? Was it easy for you to step down, or was it a process that also needed some adaptation time?
It's always a process. I would lie if I would say it's almost always easy. So there are pros and cons, of course, at the end. But the decision to go for a non-executive career, if you can say career to what you do then, it was the opportunity to go in a different perspective, not the 100% being the CEO in sometimes cold wind and strong wind, and sometimes you have also headwind, of course, and wind from the back. But this decision to go more in a kind of advisory role and being in the board of directors of different companies gives me more flexibility as a human being to explore myself in the last quarter of my professional career, and also gives me a lot of more opportunities and going broader. So seeing more people, seeing more into projects of different companies. And so therefore it's not so difficult to decide for this kind of change. Yeah.
I see. And I wonder which role is more rewarding for you, because I feel as a CEO, you're in there, you're grinding every day, you're seeing the results, you get the feedback, you have a lot of responsibility. While as a non-executive role, you're still in charge, obviously, but you're a bit further away from these direct feedbacks or interactions with the customers usually. So I often hear that they are a bit less rewarding. How did you experience that?
So the role is completely different. The perspective is completely different. Yeah. As a CEO, in a European or Swiss situation, you have the chairman of the board, who is the highest person position within the company in most of the cases. Then you have the CEO who takes care of all the operational stuff. And you don't mix these two. That means you control in terms of board of directors, and in your role, you raise questions, you ask for strategy, you ask for numbers, for financial planning, for transparency in terms of cash management and whatever. So it's all given in the normal governance of companies. And when you are CEO, then you have to take care on an operational basis. And the board of directors, it turns the perspective, looks what is the organization doing, and saying, okay, we understand what you're doing. Let's have a kind of a strategic shift, or what do you think about this and that? Can you come up with more insights on this and that problem? Why we are so weak or so strong in this area with our customers? And so it should be a good balance of governance between a board of director and the CEO as well as the executive team. And if this is running in a very, very smooth and good way, and I'm not saying you should not challenge,
of course, yeah.
Vice versa. It's about the quality of discussion, the content, and how to bring up topics that will help the company not only to survive, but to be successful in the future in its development.
So in that sense, both can be equally rewarding for you?
So in terms of money, in an operational CEO role, you earn more money. If you take reward in terms of life quality or flexibility or whatever, independency, it's a nice role to be in a board of director or be the chairman of a board of directors.
That sounds like a fair trade-off. More freedom, less money, or more money and less freedom?
Yeah, I think it's not about the money. It's about having the satisfaction of what you are doing. It's appreciated, it's needed, it's creating value. And it's also fun to some extent always, and to see that you can bring your expertise or the experience you have and all your roles in the past to new management teams. So when I was young and the first time I went up into the management and there were others then doing the projects, I had to learn that now they will do their own mistakes. And you leave to make them the mistakes. Not several times the same in a row, but of course to support them whenever it's needed, to give them some advice. And the CEO can take the advice, but he will anyway decide for himself what is the right thing for the organization.
Absolutely. Before, you mentioned cash as one metric that you track to see, are we on track as a company? How do they differentiate the KPIs that you track as a CEO versus as a board member? What do you look at to see, are we on track?
So I think it's just a level of details. You have your departments and you have sales numbers, you have business numbers in terms of underwriting, quota ratios, etc., and also in the claims and for operations, so how many calls and people. So that's, most of them is very operational, it's not interesting. So if you aggregate all these numbers into 10 to 15 KPIs or numbers that are relevant, to look very fast on what's the development over the past, what is the prediction for the future, what is the ambition for the future, and then you get into a discussion. That's the objective. And it's not that these kind of targets you set for the future, that they are right. It's a target. What you see in the past is reality. And if the reality in the past is weak and the future is bright, and there's a discussion, because now you have to explain me from these numbers coming to the other numbers, what are the actions you take as a CEO with your executive team to get there, to the result. And this is the role to do that I would say as a board of director in a challenging but in a fair way, and so therefore it's about the quality of these discussions and to fulfill all the regulatory and compliance topics that exist in the meantime. So that you mentioned cash management, it's liquidity management. So you have to take care that you are on track of what is happening, because the most dangerous thing is liquidity management for a company.
I imagine. Yeah. We also see that with many startups, obviously. So today you are an active board member, for example, at SMZH, the Zurich-based 360-degree financial services company. First of all, what made you say yes to that board role?
So I was impressed by the vision and the projects to become a kind of family office light contributor to the financial services market, to customers that have, what I said before, complexity, having life insurance, health insurance, car insurance, and also all the banking they have, then tax topics, heritage, whatever. So many questions, and it's all about money. And then to come with a kind of an idea to have advice how to manage that, and in the future also coming up with a piece of software where you combine all these information and where you get triggered by special events where you say, okay, there's a development in the market, there are some companies in the insurance or in the banking world creating new products, this would be interesting for these and these customers, and so therefore we give them a hint and we make some proposals, and we do to the benefit of the customers and the portfolios, so that he can optimize it and to keep it for the customer as simple as possible. I think it's the way of distribution, combining the agency we have today, but also as work as a broker in the future to give a service to customers that they will appreciate, because I can give all my soucis en français, all my peace of mind topics to somebody else, and he takes care. So it's not an asset manager, but it's kind of a, what do we have to do? You decide as a customer, but you get triggered with all these different events.
A bit like a sparring partner in that sense.
It's more as a sparring partner. I think it's really giving the advice and saying, you have here the opportunity. These are the options. These are the benefits. It's your decision.
I see.
Okay. I recommend option A, B, or C. And these are the disadvantages or advantages of the different options. So that's somehow the idea, to convince people. And you need, of course, to build trust that they will do that.
I see. And what are sort of the key initiatives that you're working at now as a board member at SMZH? Is it this whole platform that you're also helping to develop, or what is your core focus in that sense?
It's twofold. So the one is the establishment of relations to the different insurance companies we have for the different product lines that are relevant to SMZH. And on the other side, as I mentioned, in these kind of development of software, of course, there's a software department taking care of that, and too far away of that. But to be one of the challenges also coming from a customer and also from an insurance, not CEO, but insurance experience, backgrounds, past, to come up with, this is something that worked in the past, this is something that won't work probably, but what do we have to change to make it work? And so therefore, I would love to challenge in the future then all these activities, coming up with this new platform.
And your professional background is highly relevant to all of these initiatives. I love that.
Yeah, so it's also for SMZH, it's a company which is growing very fast. And so therefore, if you grow up from 20 to 50 is already a big step. Now we are over 100. So that means from a structural standpoint, from the competencies and skills and whatever you need. So it means that everyone who is involved in leading this company in the executive team or in board of directors to help to find the right resources that we need to overcome bottlenecks, because we want to grow and we want to develop this company in a very fast way.
So there's a lot of growth happening. I'm sure you also had growth. You saw growth, or there was even some stress during your time as a CEO. And one thing I also found particularly interesting is your connection to mindfulness. So I wonder, how did you find your way into mindfulness along your career path?
So mindfulness is, for me, one of the most important topics in terms of the different categories. Don't ask me about all different ones, but it's all about to include people, to listen to people, then also to be attentive in a way that in the whole organization you can, as a role model, a little bit spread of this kind of cultural enzymes. Mm-hmm. And I think it leads also into the world of work-life balance and also to be able to come down and to stay cool and staying relaxed, even if the pressure is quite high, and if you're in a kind of a triangle from shareholder and regulator and customer and the market and whoever is pushing with some expectations. Mm-hmm. And you know that in the last years, especially during the COVID, there was kind of a pressure and immediately all the normal information and communication was shut down and was then recreated by new technology and very fast implemented. So this was a good moment also to reflect and to see what's important and what's for the future relevant, and to see, as a community you can always solve problems much easier than as an individual. Yeah. And as long as you're open enough to keep this community open, then you will probably better succeed as an individual.
Definitely. And what are some regular mindfulness practices that you have embedded in your daily life?
Give me an example of what you would think. I mean, just do some yoga or...
Sure, yoga, meditation, whatever you can think of.
So the only thing what I do is in stressful moments, it's to be very aware of myself in terms of that's exactly the moment where you have to be calm. Mm-hmm. It's like a training of programming yourself and visualizing or imagine yourself in this crisis, and just to take you out and look at you and what do you don't want to see? What would you like to see? Mm-hmm. What is the behavior? What are the words? So does it work for 100%? Of course not. But it's kind of a idea of taking you out and observing yourself and trying to bring you in a mood and in a kind of behavior that for the outside world it looks okay. You're still calm, and this is more having everything under control as hectic, left, right, up and down, and whatever, being loud, etc., doesn't lead to a good result.
And that also directly impacts the people that you work with around you immediately.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
if we now look a bit into the future, you found your new calling in a non-executive role. At the same time, I also wonder, could you ever imagine stepping back into a CEO role, or is that done and over for now?
You should never say never, huh? But what I can imagine is that at interim, a kind of management role, because of a succession planning, and you have to bridge a year or a year and a half and to help out and to fix maybe in this time and to prepare everything for everyone, for somebody who can start not from scratch, but in terms of having a kind of a cleaned portfolio. And so therefore, this I can imagine. If there's the one in a lifetime chance coming again around the corner, I don't know. So it has to be, But I'm really quite happy with what I'm doing at the moment with the several mandates I have, and so let's wait and see. So I'm not pushing anything in a direction.
You're open but not actively looking.
Exactly.
Nice. To wrap up the conversation today, we would also like to ask you some rapid fire questions. I give you a short question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in 1 sentence maximum. You ready?
Okay.
One word that best describes your leadership style.
Listener.
What's the best advice that you ever received?
Be authentic.
I like that. What's your favorite book on leadership or business in general?
I was a young man and read Chrysler Story, The Good Fortune, from Leah Cocker, because there were so many ingredients, and very interesting.
Nice. I have never heard about that one. I will put that on my list. Your morning routine. What's the first thing that you do every day?
I make a cup of tea for my wife and read the news.
Cool. And what's the most challenging decision that you've had to make as a CEO?
It's restructuring a company with all its implications on organization, people, and culture.
Probably also letting people go in that sense.
Exactly, yeah.
What does money mean to you?
So now we have a good life in Switzerland, and this is something we're living on a high standard, and I'm very, very thankful for that.
Absolutely. Maybe the last question for you today, if you could look into the future and wish for something, what would it be?
Kamala Harris for president.
Nice. Perfect. Antti, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your time and your insights. I wish you all the best and lots of success with your new roles, and keep crushing.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.